Normally, I wouldn't do a video like this where I'm, reporting on news within the prog community, but this is one that I have a bit to say about, and I just want to gush with you guys. So this is going to be like one of those unedited notes where I don't do a whole lot of editing. I don't do a whole lot of like scripting or anything like that, because a lot of it has been floating around in my head and I want to talk about it. So for those of you that don't know, you've been living under a rock for the past 24 hours, or I guess at this point, 48 hours, and you haven't seen the news. You would have seen it in the title of this video as well as the thumbnail. Mike Portnoy is back in Dream Theater. And I never thought I would actually see the day where I would be able to say that without prefacing it with like an April Fool's joke. This news came out of nowhere. There was no whispers in the winds. There was no like teasers at anything. Like, to live in today's news media cycle where everything has teases and everything has like little hints in the wind. The fact that they were able to hold on to this for so long, it makes me smile that, we don't have these leaked news stuff going on. So yeah, for those of you, again, that don't quite know the importance of this, Mike Portnoy was one of the founding members of Dream Theater when it was still known as Majesty. And I believe it was his father that either came up with the name or came up with the actual logo design that would be prominent on every album. It's basically like the Dream Theater version of Eddie from Iron Maiden, right? It's that kind of signature Dream Theater thing. So the DNA of Dream Theater really was the balancing of Mike Portnoy on the drums, John Petrucci on the lead guitar, John Mayong on bass, and yeah, that was kind of like the formation. That was the crux of it, and that was kind of the DNA for the longest time. Then back in the early 2010s, we're looking at like 2009, 2010, they had a falling out. Mike Portnoy left the band and tried to get back, and they had already closed and barred the doors behind him, essentially, after he was just like, look, I did wrong. I had another outburst, but I'm going to try to get better. And they were like, no, you're already out of the band and we're already looking for a new drummer. And so they had this kind of like America's Got Talent, this little bit of a game show to see who's going to fill the drum kit. And lo and behold, we have Mike Mangini filling the role. And he's the one that's been playing with Dream Theater ever since. And there was always kind of like what ifs. There was always this kind of like what if Mike Portnoy would come back. Because like, for the most part, the band has been pretty, because fans have always asked and like, hey, is Mike Portnoy coming back? He is one of the founding members. A lot of the Dream Theater core sounds come from Mike Portnoy. And I will be perfectly honest, after digesting and sitting with all the albums past Portnoy, they've never really hit me. They've never really sat well with me after I've digested it, whereas all the albums with Portnoy, there's always something for me to go back to. There's always this kind of underlining thing that is begging me to listen to it. Even with some of those albums that some people might not necessarily like as much, like Falling Into Infinity, Systematic Chaos, or Train of Thought, like I love those albums. I really do. But with all of the albums post Portnoy, they always just kind of felt like John Petrucci plus friends, and I think my favorite one out of the bunch is the one that was released right after Portnoy left with a dramatic turn of events. And I mean, I still will, like, I'm a Astonishing apologist because I still really like what they were doing with the Astonishing, but like A View from the Top of a World, Distance Over Time, the self-titled, they never really did anything, and I've never really gone back to them. So now that Mike Mangini has kind of taken his bow, I've also really liked how everybody's been handling the press release. Everybody's, this is basically a homecoming. And one of the things that Mike Portnoy has stated is like, there's no place like home. Like, this really is his home. And I just saw on his social media, he got a tattoo, like, right over his heart saying, "You are home." And like, what an emotional outpour, you know, like this was his baby in so many respects. Like it was a marriage between everybody in the band, and it always kind of felt a little distant, you know? So first, you know, we're already 5 minutes into this video. What I want to say kind of at this point is I want to applaud Mike Mangini for his time with Dream Theater. And I will be one of the first people to say I've never been a fan of his style within Dream Theater because it's always felt more like a session drummer rather than a Dream Theater drummer, you know? And if you're looking at other individuals who have come through a little bit of a revolving door, and we just look at, say, like the keyboard players, because Dream Theater's had three, you know, Kevin Moore and Derek Sherinian and Jordan Rudess, they all brought their own personalities to be the Dream Theater keyboardist, right? Like each one brought their own personality. Like Moore brought his kind of introspective and very emotional side of things. Sherinian brought his fun and like John Lord improvisation aspect to it, and Rudess brought his Rick Wakeman mile a minute, you know, being able to keep tempo and keep pace with John Petrucci, so that like each one really had both their own personality to be Dream Theater's keyboard player. I never felt that with Mike Mangini. You know, I never felt like Mike Mangini was Dream Theater's drummer. It always felt like Mike Mangini was the session drummer that they got to play Dream Theater songs. And in that case, he did a spectacular job. And I don't want to discredit Mike Mangini for what he is. And what he is a brilliant timekeeper. He's a brilliant tempo maker. You know, he is a brilliant session drummer, and it really was the last album, you know, Views from the Top of the World, where I started to feel like Dream Theater as a group was starting to play with the strengths of Mike Mangini. Like Mike Mangini is a fast, intense drummer. You know, he is always on beat, always on tempo, whether it's 1 BPM or if it's 1,000,000 BPM, you know, he's always right on time, regardless of the speed, and he's able to keep up. You know, he was like Sonic the Hedgehog in that sense. And that could be very interesting for a Dream Theater set list, but I never felt like Dream Theater was writing songs to showcase his style of playing. You know, they were always writing songs that, for lack of a better term, Mike Portnoy should have been really elevating and really bringing to the forefront. And it wasn't until the last album and a couple of songs from Distance Over Time that I felt like they were really capturing something and really playing to his strengths. So on the one hand, it's a little bit of a shame that just as the band was coming into their own with this new drummer after 10 years, or more than 10 years at this point, 13 years, that this was the time that they would welcome Mike Portnoy back. And on the one hand, it's almost an inevitability, you know, and Mike Mangini has already gone on record saying that he's not surprised that this is happening and there's absolutely no bad blood. And, you know, I can understand that, you know, he was brought in not to replace Mike Portnoy, but to be the session drummer, unfortunately, for Dream Theater. And I know that the rhetoric from Dream Theater and from all the band members was always, no, Mike Mangini is our drummer. He is, you know, the Dream Theater drummer. But from a PR standpoint, you know, that's what they kind of had to say. You know, if they were just to say, oh no, he's keeping the kit warm until Mike Portnoy's back in the kit, it doesn't really reflect all that well, you know? So I understand why the rhetoric was what it was and why they're bringing him back into the fold. So yeah, I think part of the reason why we are here is the burying of the hatchet and the kind of looking towards the future for Dream Theater, you know? Because there was quite a bit of bad blood between the band members. You know, there was a lot of aminosity, I think is the word, between Mike Portnoy and a lot of the band members. You know, John Petrucci tried to defend him as much as he could, but there was just a little bit of bad blood. And I know that James LeBray had quite a bit of hurt feelings and was ultimately kind of felt betrayed by Mike Portnoy, you know, which led him to leave the band, you know? And so with so many things kind of in the works after these past couple of years, like these past 3 to 4 years, with Liquid Tension Experiment 3 being such a success and him playing very well with John Petrucci and Jordan Rudess, with Mike Portnoy playing so well with John Petrucci on his solo record, and Mike Portnoy coming out and supporting Dream Theater with a couple of the live shows and actually meeting with most of the band members and actually having a good heart-to-heart sit-down with James LeBray. You know, and there was this kind of like, as I mentioned, like a bearing of a hatchet of like, yeah, you hurt me and this is how it affected me. And I'm sure that there was a lot of apologizing and a lot of promises to do better. And, you know, I'm pretty sure in those conversations, this idea was floated around of like, hey, Mike Portnoy wants to be with you guys. This is his home. He's been having a lot of fun doing a lot of his side projects with like Neil Morse and the Winery Dogs and, you know, all of his other ones, Sons of Apollo and all that. But I mean, there was also kind of whispers, if you were thinking about it, like Winery Dogs was kind of like, yeah, this is going to be one of our last shows. And even Sons of Apollo were like, yeah, I don't think we're going to have another album. So a lot of that was kind of like putting things into place so that Mike Portnoy could essentially return home. So that he wasn't just being the drummer for all these other side projects. So yeah, in that case, it kind of makes sense that we're having this now. I'm glad to see that this is the turn of events that we have. You know, it's kind of a dramatic return of events in a certain turn of phrase. The last thing that I want to mention after all this and after kind of digesting it is the look to the future. You know, so I've covered kind of like where we were to come here, where we were as this is happening, and my absolute, you know, gushing about this. Turning to the future, you know, I really hope that now that Mike Mangini is back on the market, he can find a band that really does showcase his skills. Because as I mentioned before, he is a beast behind the kit. And I really hope that he's able to find like a speed metal or a thrash metal or something to really hone in his skills. You know, like I would love to see him slide into either, oh, wouldn't it be fun if he slid into Sons of Apollo? Just to have that kind of fun aspect. But no, I really hope that he finds his legs. You know, I really hope that he's able to find a good project that suits his needs. And for the upcoming Dream Theater album that they're going to be recording in 2024, I hope that the fan base tempers their expectations a little bit. You know, like the last 4 to 5 Dream Theater albums weren't great, if I'm being perfectly honest. And this is coming from a huge Dream Theater fanboy. You know, like I love Dream Theater, you know, but let's be reminded that we're probably not going to get another Images and Words or Metropolis Part 2. Like, we're not going to get those huge albums. What we'll probably get is, like, something both a little bit on the safe side to kind of get the juices flowing and get things back on track, with a little bit of experimentation and a fully fleshed out kind of a concept. You know, because that was something that Mike Portnoy always brought to the table, is the structure and concept of an album. So I really hope that it's going to be a really nicely well-rounded album with a really great concept behind it, with music that we've heard from, like the Liquid Tension Experiment 3 that came out a couple years ago, and flavors of that kind of John Petrucci, Jordan Rudess noodling. So that's kind of what I'm hoping, and I really hope that we temper our expectations so that we're not expecting like a masterpiece right out of the gate. I have a feeling it'll probably take 1 or 2 album cycles for them to get back into that A game, you know, get back into that flow, because I'm sure Mike Portnoy is busting with ideas and concepts and songs that he wants to float by the group. And I'm sure that the group is really excited to work within that kind of a structure. So those are my thoughts. Those are what I'm hoping to see. And that is the video. Those are all my thoughts. So what do you guys think about this? Are you excited to see Mike Portnoy back in the band? Are you kind of optimistically concerned, or are you more critically excited? You know, I feel like those are kind of the two sides of things that you can see. What I'm super excited for is to finally see Mike Portnoy live once again with Dream Theater. doing an encore from another band, because the first time I saw Dream Theater was with their Black Clouds and Silver Linings tour in Toronto, and they did the first encore with the Camera Eye from Rush. And I know they're going to be doing Dance of Eternity, and seeing Mike behind the kit doing Dance of Eternity, I'm going to weep. Absolutely, I'm going to weep. So let me know what you're excited for, what your own thoughts about this are. Let me know by commenting down below. And that's all I've got for you guys today. I was planning to put out my Trevor Rabin album review today, but obviously things got in the way, so expect that next week, as well as my King Gizzard album review for the Silver Chord. And if I'm feeling up to it, I've got another 20 album reviews probably within 40 minutes. So look out for those coming very, very soon. And until then, I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.